just know that you can retrain your mind. You can reprogram it to have new beliefs, new ways of thinking and feeling, and create new intentional realities for yourself based on these new thoughts and emotions.
We are infinite. We always have been. We always will be. There's so much more to us. And when you start to realize that and start to really embody that, that's when you start to realize just how much control you have over your life, and how much control you have to create the life that you want, and then to bring others along with you on the ride.
This is Intentionally Ever After. Join intentional lifestyle coach Joe Bukartek for a series of personal conversations and coaching sessions with various people about how living with intention shows up for them.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Intentionally Ever After. Today, I am very delighted to be speaking with a power couple, and for the first time ever on Intentionally Ever After, a group is featured on an episode, and that group is the lovely Emily Rose Summersett and Scott Roberts. Welcome, you two.
Why, thank you.
Why, thank you.
I'm really loving this power couple.
I know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you had to have felt it, right? Well, I'm feeling it from the other side of this camera here.
That's right. We're all energy. We're all very powerful.
Love that. Great start. So will you kindly introduce yourself so that folks know who we're speaking with?
Actually, I love letting Scott go first because I'm not your typical woman. I believe in men having the right to go first as well.
That's right. She refuses to open the door for me, but she refuses to let me open the door for her either. So it all works out.
That's perfect.
We're a couple. We're a business couple and a life couple. We've been together for 27 years now. Met at a mountain bike race in the summer of 1995 in the mountains of North Carolina, and we've been inseparable ever since. And we are entrepreneurs that work together. We have our own podcast, the Heavily Meditated Podcast, and then we also offer coaching and mentorship for clients. Mm-hmm. Emily, I'm going to let you take over and talk a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, so I guess we need to rewind just a little bit.
Yes.
Obviously, we've been together for, multiple decades at this point. But I guess our business journey began after Scott had what we like to call his breakdown to breakthrough. He grew up in a fairly turbulent household and, wasn't quite sure how to deal with the mental and emotional ups and downs of just living in that type of environment. And it was really his breakdown to breakthrough that was a catalyst for us to start our first business, which has been over a decade ago. And so our first business, we were in the yoga industry. We had a yoga mat company. We still have it. It's a little bit on the back burner because we quickly found out once we started that company that a lot of people started coming to us to help them start their own business. And, obviously after we had multiple people come to us, we said, you know what, this is a way we can be of service. So let's go ahead and start supporting people. And then obviously we needed to make an income. So we started charging them for that, for our experience and our expertise. And it was very easy to teach the business side of things, but we quickly realized that it was the mindset, it was the inner work, it was being fearful around money, around being visible, putting themselves out there, confidence. We quickly noticed that there was a lot of negative self-talk going on. And so that eventually led us into the life coaching piece, which then eventually led me to Rapid Transformational Therapy. It's also known as RTT, which is this wonderful blend of therapies, psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming, and cognitive behavioral therapy. And that therapy is amazing because it allows me to dialogue directly with the subconscious mind. And so I can go into the mind of my clients and we can find out, what are the beliefs in there that have been stopping them from achieving a specific goal. And then from there, once we identify them, we're able to disrupt them and reframe them and then reprogram the subconscious. So I guess long story short, it was through our own struggle, our own suffering, and getting really curious about, why we are the way we are, why we have certain thoughts and emotions and behaviors, and obviously how it impacts the action that we take is what led us to dive deeper. For, well over a decade now, we've just been geeking out on just studying human consciousness and neuroscience and just really trying to understand so that we can help others. Because ultimately, we're meant to enjoy this life. Our natural state of being is well-being. It's not suffering. And so we're here to elevate the masses, to raise a collective consciousness. And, hopefully we're setting a positive example for others. And obviously we've got our podcast heavily meditated because we really believe in the power of creating our reality, being very intentional, just like your listeners, and kind of creating our realities and premeditating and curating the experience that we want to have in life and who we want to show up as. And so I know I'm going off on a tangent, but we're here to have a lively conversation. So
Absolutely. No, it's a great tangent. If anything, it's related to every other question that I will be asking you from here on out. So not much in the form of tangent. Yeah. So the hills or mountains of North Carolina, that's not where you currently are, is it?
No, we are currently on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. So trying to make a long story short, we traveled a ton for mountain bike races and events and just, to go to rides all the time when we met in the 90s and traveled all over, the East Coast. And then we started traveling out west to go mountain biking as well. Ended up in Colorado for a while. Emily was doing an internship at a cycling publication, so we ended up there. Then we went to California the following summer. We lived out of a car, took surfer showers the entire summer and just rode our bikes and built bikes at a bike shop. But then we ended up traveling all over the world for almost 5 years straight. And we ended up here in Hawaii, which was supposed to be for about a month. And then we were going to travel all through the South Pacific and into Asia and all that. And then we got here and just kind of fell in love with it and stayed here for about a year. And then the pandemic hit, and we're like, well, this is a perfect opportunity to just build a home base. And so that's where we have it now. And so, yeah.
And it's beautiful here. We love the energy, the aloha spirit. The people here are just so kind. And then obviously Oahu is actually the gathering place. That's the name that it's been given because there are people from all over the world who live here, who come here to enjoy this beautiful, beautiful island. And it just feels like home because we kind of see ourselves as global citizens, as world citizens. So
not a bad locale to be doing the work that you find yourself doing.
Oh, we love it.
Yeah, we love it.
Very grateful for this life that we've intentionally created.
Yes, I was going to say, it sounds very intentional to this point. How would you define, either one of you can take this one to start, how would you define living intentionally?
I know for me and for us, so much of living intentionally means that you're actually curating and creating your own life and your own reality. So rather than living life by default, you're actually the conscious creator of everything in your life. And it's funny, I was thinking about this when I was in the shower this morning, as I'm, thinking about all the great conversation we're going to have for this show. And I was thinking about it more and more. And I'm like, it's so funny that everybody, when they hear that so much, sometimes they'll think, well, this is really strange. You can't really create your own reality. You can't create your own life. I mean, it's given to you. It's preordained or whatever. But if you were to right now go into your home and grab all of your clothes as they are, move them to another drawer, and then go into your kitchen and completely reorganize it, put all the stuff in different drawers and all that, how many times would you go to the old drawer location and open it up, trying to get silverware, and realize you just opened the drawer that you put towels in? So why is it that we can do that? We can do that because we don't live intentionally the majority of our lives. 95% of our brain's program is just autopilot. We're running off the subconscious programs. And that's what allows you to physically walk over to a drawer, open that drawer with your hand while still being able to breathe and your blood's pumping and your cells are dividing. And you're able to open up that drawer, but it's the wrong one because you weren't consciously thinking about opening it. You had a program that was running that allowed you to breathe, to live, all that, and to go to the wrong drawer. And the same thing happens with the majority of our lives, is that we spend so much of our time on that autopilot. So if you're not intentionally creating your life, then that's where you live, just in that autopilot zone. And that's what, to us, being intentional about your life is spending more of your time in the conscious zone and less time in that subconscious program that was put in there from birth up until the age of 7 to 9 years old. Everything's just wired into a program, and that's how you live your life the majority of the time. So,
yeah, I love that metaphor. That's really well put. I mean, the autopilot idea, but the visual of that, I'm picturing the drawers. That.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't. You're right. We don't think about a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think is the cost of living on autopilot, of living maybe unintentionally?
You don't live.
You exist, but you don't
exist. Live. Yeah. We are gifted these higher faculties of our mind, especially the imagination. Our imagination is what creates worlds, is what creates our reality. First we visualize it within our mind's eye with our consciousness, and then it begins to materialize, outside of us. And so animals, they're definitely on autopilot. They weren't gifted, those higher faculties that we have. And so they're just out there procreating, like we're all here to procreate. They're out there running through their little rituals of eating and mating and cleaning themselves and, just doing normal things to survive. And I'm not saying that their experience isn't wonderful, because I know by looking at a smiling dog's face that they're having a great time too. But what I'm saying is that we're not truly living if we are not aware of ourselves. Self-realization is the key to being an intentional creator. So obviously, we want to ask your audience, how can you begin to practice more self-awareness every single day, and jumping out of the program, out of the matrix, out of that subconscious programming that has you thinking the same way you did the day before, feeling the same emotions, taking the same actions, behavior? How can you pause for a moment and just be the conscious observer of yourself, and just noticing how the thoughts that you're thinking and the emotion, the corresponding emotion that's released into your body through neurochemicals, how is it creating the same outcomes every single day? Yeah. Whether you want to label those outcomes as positive or negative. And how can you just see those outcomes as they are, not attaching meaning to them, unless you want to? At any given moment, we get to decide what meaning we want to attach to experience, whether it's catastrophic, that's the meaning we want to attach to it, or whether it's total bliss and joy and enjoyment of life. So again, Scott and I, our lives really began to open up the moment that we began to just notice our thoughts, notice the emotions, and learned how to self-regulate those thoughts and emotions.
Would you say that you two kind of, I'll say evolved, for lack of a better term, at kind of along the same time, at the point you were both noticing and deciding to reflect upon, or noticing these moments of autopilot while you were together?
Yeah, definitely. It all, as Emily said before, it really began in 2006 when I had my big breakdown, a breakthrough moment. And it was, a matter of Emily and I were living a good life. It's not like we had a terrible life, that we were unhappy. Our relationship was amazing. We had so much fun, and we had great friends, and we were having amazing experiences. We had a beautiful home. Everything was going really well. But the problem was that I wasn't living the life that I truly desired in some ways. So in other words, the work that I was doing wasn't making me happy. And I had been in that place my whole life without ever questioning if there was a way to not be in that place. So that was the big thing, that it was just natural that you would be miserable in your job. It was just natural that if you wanted the house, you wanted the car, you wanted the family, all that, you had to suffer. And you had to take jobs that you didn't like because you had to make the money. And that was how you live. And it wasn't until I finally snapped and was like, I just can't do this anymore. I've been working like this for 20 years in misery every day, never addressing why, never thinking about, why am I not happy doing jobs that everybody else are super happy doing? why am I so miserable? And when I finally came to that place where I just couldn't take that anymore, then we both at that moment realized, oh, wait, so there's been something going on that we've never talked about, that we've never addressed. And rather than both of us going off on different paths and her saying, well, you're crazy and I don't want to have to deal with this crap and leave, which was certainly probably an option that a lot of wives would have taken at that point, considering what I put her through. But we decided at that moment that we loved each other, that we wanted to be together, and that we wanted to understand what was happening and to grow from it. And kudos to both of us that we were able to do it together, and we supported each other. And times Emily rises way above me really quickly and I have to catch up. And then every once in a while, usually it's her that lifts up first. And
we would all assume that, yes.
Yeah. But I mean, seriously, it is just that, the two of us were willing to grow together. And that's been us all along. We kind of knew early on in our relationship that we wanted to be together. Like literally, I think we've probably spent a total of maybe 2 weeks total apart in our entire relationship. I mean, we literally spend almost every waking minute together, and we always have. We just like it. And so that's where we grow from, is together as a couple and inspiring each other. Emily always inspires me to be the best version of myself that I can be. And so, that's how we got to where we are.
That's pretty significant. You threw out that last little stat of how often you were not apart from one another. It's pretty significant.
Yeah. So at that time in 2006, Scott was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. And I could definitely see the moments where, it's this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I could see when he was his true self, his aligned self, his highest self. And then I could see when the paradigms are playing out. And you don't give up on a person because they haven't learned how to self-regulate. And knowing, his background and, his family life growing up. I don't know why, I just could very clearly see what was going on in his mind. And I don't know why, I just had this visual of this marble running down the same little track over and over again. I was thinking, he's just been thinking the same thoughts. And this is before I even really started learning more about this stuff. But the first book that I found was Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. And it explained the duality of our minds in vivid detail. And I was like, this is what's going on. Okay, now that we know what's going on, we have that awareness, we can begin to course correct. We can begin to heal and, do whatever we need to do to disconnect these little neural pathways that have been firing and wiring in the same way and start to create new ones. So, if there's anyone out there who is going through a similar situation, we obviously came to realize that bipolar is just a label that we slap on that particular way of firing and wiring. Well, our brains, we can change them. They're plastic. We can refire and rewire. So just know that everything is just a label. It's not who you are. Who you are is way more powerful than that. And you just need to learn a new way of thinking and emoting. That's all. And so hopefully, this will be some great information for those of you who maybe have been diagnosed with something similar. Just know that you can retrain your mind. You can reprogram it to have new beliefs, new ways of thinking and feeling, and create new intentional realities for yourself based on these new thoughts and emotions. And it's just learning how to master them, be the one driving your own car versus, being on that runaway train where you feel like you have no control. So this is a perfect moment to remember that you are powerful and that you are in control, even though it may not feel like it.
Right. So it sounds key that the person has to believe they can change, but they also have to want to change.
Yes. Always.
Yeah. And I mean, I know we probably have tons of other questions we need to get to, so I'll try and make this as fast as I can, but really going back to the diagnosis of being labeled, which they actually called me atypical medication-resistant bipolar 2 disorder with tendencies of severe anxiety and depression. So basically I swung from, which they call cycling or mood cycling or, that sort of thing. But so in other words, I would go from really, really depressed where I just couldn't get out of bed. I could barely even breathe, didn't want to be around anybody, to moments where I always thought like, well, bipolar disorder means you're manic depressive. So that means like you think you're God for, a couple days and you don't have to sleep and you're like on top of the world and then you crash. But that was never my experience. So I never really thought of myself that way until they diagnosed me. But I never had those manic highs to where I was always super happy for days. It was more like I was either really pissed off and angry and violent, or I was really depressed and sad and weak. Those were the two states I were in. It wasn't because I had some chemical imbalance in my brain that could be cured with, a little pill. It was because I was depressed because I was thinking about the past, living in the past, replaying old stories of misery and pain and suffering. And then I was violent and angry because after feeling that way for a while, I'd get very frustrated and there was no outlet for it. And then when you couple that with you're taking medication, which starts flooding your mental chemistry with essentially energy, like you just pounded back coffee, now you're trying to control your depression by elevating your mood, which when you're already cycling to an angry place, elevates that even higher. So I started having horrible suicidal ideations. I was swinging worse than I ever had. I was sick all the time for the medication. And it was, ultimately just a point to where the doctors were telling me that there was very little hope for me, that I was probably looking at either institutionalization or having electroconvulsive therapy, where they put the electrodes to your head and shock you. They were saying those were the only hopes. And this was after a year and a half of straight therapy, once to twice to 3 times a week. I was getting worse and worse and worse. So it wasn't until I decided that this can't be right. I wasn't this bad before this happened. Why is this all of a sudden coming on? And why are they telling me this is hopeless? And that's when we just made the decision, me, Emily together, that there's something wrong with this. I know there's a better way. And so we made the decision, that's it. I want to get off all the medication. I want to stop going to therapy, telling me that I'm broken, that I don't have any power over this. And the only thing that will help is the medication, but that's not helping. So that I'm hopeless. So we just made the decision to stop that cycle. And we instead dove real deep into meditation, into practicing yoga on a consistent basis, and not doing all the external things that made the condition worse, and then focusing more on the internal as the way to change.
Yeah, so creating a nice, happy internal environment.
Yeah. So that's why we call our podcast the Heavily Meditated Podcast, because for the longest time, I was heavily medicated, as are so many people out there that struggle with mental health issues. And they're told that so often that the only cure for what their problem is to relieve this chemical imbalance in your brain that's, the cause of everything. And then you'll be fine. But then if it doesn't work, then what's your alternative?
Right.
Then you're stuck. Just keep increasing the dosage. And if that doesn't work, then sorry, you're out of luck.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's an amazing name, but I love how it's organically driven as well, right? From your story. Mm-hmm. Guys, we're not going to get to the main questions because you make me think of all these wonderful other questions. I'm wondering if we can get to the idea again of the power couple, because, obviously that you had a very significant transformation, if you want to call it that. Call it something else if you want to be less dramatic. But it seems like a very significant transformation. How do you imagine you would have done that without the support of Emily, who was on the same page with you and willing to go on this journey? Because Emily, you said, who would you be to leave someone to figure out their own stuff? Mm-hmm. Well, you didn't say those words exactly, but I think a lot of people would have found another path, a path of less resistance, perhaps.
Yeah, a lot of us, we give up too quickly, and that directly impacts the results that we get in life and the experiences that we get to have. If I can give your listeners any kind of advice very humbly, be willing to feel big, to live big, to just look at the challenges as opportunities for growth, and that your default state is, it really is, it's just love, your pure consciousness. And so if you can start to, observe your human moments with less judgment, with more compassion, and just notice them as they are, that when we humans are in fear, we behave in poor ways. We say things that aren't so great to each other. And just know that, if that's happening to you, whether you're the one that's doing that or someone's doing that to you, it's just fear acting out. It's, there's the expression that hurt people. But just know it's not them. It's just a paradigm. It's just a program that they were shown and taught, usually in childhood, that is designed to keep them alive. And so, if you can approach those moments with yourself and others with more love and compassion, and again, deciding not to attach a negative meaning to it rather than just being, oh, wow, that's interesting. Look at that person. Something's going on where they're very scared right now in this moment. And, what's causing that fear and what moments in the past, installed that fear deep into their subconscious. All of us, we have this belief, the fear comes out in the form of this feeling that we don't belong and somehow that we're different, or that whatever we want's not available to us, or that we're just simply not enough. They're all just beliefs, and they're all not true. They're all lies. And so, if I can gift you anything in this moment as you're listening, just remember you're pure love. You're beautiful. You're the divine. You're, spirit in human form, whatever you want to call it. And let's all just practice more compassion, especially as we move through this interesting time. Just more compassion for each other and how we're each experiencing and acting out what's going on in this moment. Just, that's it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for...
Thank you, everyone's amazing, regardless of, their behavior.
Yeah.
Because I can see their behavior as it is. It's just fear expressing itself.
Right. That seems like it would...
Or it's love. All the loving moments, too. I don't want to ignore those.
Of course. It seems like it would be tricky for someone kind of going it alone, if you will. Someone who doesn't have a partner at that moment when they're struggling, or at the moment when or the series of moments when they're starting to figure out how to live perhaps more intentionally, when they're starting to reframe their autopilot as a series of decisions that they haven't been making and now want to be living more intentionally. How would you encourage someone who's perhaps single or on this journey seemingly by themselves without a partner in crime? What would you encourage them to do?
There's always someone.
Yeah, and I mean, seeking help, just and that can come in so many forms. And I mean, these days, like if you're not informed, that's a conscious decision to be ignorant, because there's so much available information for you that's completely free for you to learn from. You can listen to podcasts like yours. You can get this information. You can go on YouTube and find millions, billions, trillions of resources. All that, but ultimately doing it completely on your own is tougher. So we always tell people whenever they're having any sort of issue that they just can't seem to get past themselves, that they have to bring on a support system of somebody who has been there and knows what they're going through and is able to help them get out of it. Somebody that's been on that journey themselves. And that's what helped us. I mean, we were fortunate that it came down to Oprah Winfrey actually put on a live telecast with Eckhart Tolle, and just for, I think it was a week or 2 weeks.
No, it's, I think, maybe months.
Or, like months or whatever. It was a long dive into the book, and she basically went live on a stream with him, and he's answering questions about the book and everything. And so us being able to get that knowledge and have somebody tell us something like that was so transformative for us. And then that's when the journey started. That's when we started hiring our own mentors and started getting coached ourselves. I mean, even though we had each other, if we hadn't had outside professional support from people that understood what we were going through and knew how to get us past it, we wouldn't have had the results that we have now.
Mm-hmm. And I would like to do a reframe. I would like to say that it's easy to do it on your own.
It is.
Because you are in control of your life, and you can make the decision in this moment to begin to seek out the people, the resources, whatever you need in order to begin to live an intentional life. And, one thing that you can do for yourself in this moment that's independent of everything else, is you can begin to monitor your dialogue with yourself, with your inner conversation. And, I want you to make the decision today, especially going into the new year, to fire your inner critic, that voice that within you that tells you everything that just disempowers you. And I want you to begin to praise yourself. And yes, it may be difficult in the beginning because our subconscious mind, it loves what's familiar and distastes what's unfamiliar. So you need to start making that unfamiliar self-praise familiar and making the self-criticism unfamiliar, which is, if it has been familiar. And it just takes practice. As adults, we learn through repetition. So the more that you start to, silence that inner critic and begin to bring on that positive self-talk and self-love, it'll get easier and easier and easier. The same way you would approach learning a new language or learning how to surf or ski, you can do it. It's totally possible. I just want you to know that.
I love it. Love the idea of practicing, repetition, doing these things that you believe will give you the life that you want. Mm-hmm. What for the two of you has been a change in habit that has had an exponential payoff?
Habit of thought and emotion. Like, oh, there goes that habit of thought again that's not really constructive and it's worst case scenario thinking. Yeah. I know everyone can relate with the pandemic, our heads can kind of go down the toilet. So it's just being aware of that internal dialogue is so critical and changing it because, again, you can see that they're all lies. Ask yourself, is this belief, is this, what I'm telling myself, ultimately true? What could be truer? Yeah. What is the truth with a capital T? And then that'll silence that little inner critic, right? It'll shut it right up.
Yeah. So we're talking kind of essentially about the power of reframing. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yep. Just changing that inner dialogue, the habit of thought.
Yeah, well, and circling back to the whole concept of how you're running on your subconscious so often. The thing I geek out on is like all the neuroscience stuff that we learn as part of this process, and learning all the statistics about how your brain works and all that, and just when you learn that the average person has between 60,000 to 90,000 thoughts a day, and of those 60,000 to 90,000 thoughts a day, 95% or 90% are the same thoughts that you've had the day before and the day before that and the day before that. And it takes so much mental energy for us to recycle the past all the time and to live in those repetitive programs of, oh God, this is going to be so hard. Life is really difficult. Money's hard to come by. I'll never find the love of my life. These are the thoughts that we're thinking 90,000 times a day. And yet we have all that energy just wasted when it could be directed towards, I really want to create a new future for myself that's full of wealth, that's full of love, that is limitless. I can do anything with. And when you realize that, we're using so much of our mental capacity and so much of our mind power to focus on the negative and to focus on the past rather than to create our reality, when you shift, and you just start making the little shift day by day, little incremental shifts, so that more and more of your thoughts are geared towards what you want and what you desire. Imagine all that power now being directed towards creating your life rather than just surviving it, living through it. So
rather than default habit of thought, let's bring in some fresh new information so we can become intentional creators of our reality. Every single day, every single moment. If there's anything about your life that you want to change, guess what? You can. You can. And it's just up to you to make that decision that you're willing and open to seeing things differently, to viewing your world differently, and then taking action from that space.
I think you already addressed what I was going to ask you next, which was more about external circumstances, things that were preordained, to borrow a word from you, Scott, from earlier. Weather, traffic, I don't know, a global pandemic, a lot of things that happen to us, right, outside of our control. How do you engage with that? Because obviously there's a lot of autopilot narratives that we can all kind of get cozy around and commiserate around. And, there's enough of it going around. Why not just like snuggle up and misery loves company, right? So how does one address or handle that?
Everything is you pushed out, meaning the world's just reflecting back what you're thinking about and how you're feeling. So you're in complete control. You can see the world is falling apart, going to hell in a handbasket, whatever the expressions are that you use. Or you can say, life is beautiful. You're just opposite ends of the spectrum. We don't see with our eyes. Decide how you want to view your life, your world. Do you want to view it through the lens of fear, or do you want to view it through the lens of love? Only you get to answer that question. And you get to decide whether you see all of, what we label as negative or all of what we label as positive. It's up to you.
Yeah, and there's ways that you can do that in the external world and the internal world. So if you know that you want your life to be full of joy, if you want your life to be happy, then you surround yourself in a physical environment that's filled with that. So you surround yourself with amazing people that make you happy. You listen to fantastic podcasts that give you information that inspire and uplift you. That's how you control the external world as much as you can, by controlling what you're ingesting, what you're consuming, because what we consume consumes us. So if you spend all your time looking at the news, convinced that the world's falling apart, that everybody hates everybody, and that the life here on Earth just sucks, and that we're probably going to end up on Mars, then that's your reality, and that's what you'll believe, and that's what your future reality will hold for you. But if you choose to surround yourself with uplifting, inspiring messages all the time, and you curate what you're consuming so that it is something that lifts you up rather than pulls you down, that makes the internal process more easy, because then you're not having to fight against what you're consuming externally all the time. But then once you're able to do that, you get inside, and that begins to reflect more into your external world. So the more you spend in your internal world, curating the experience you want to have, envisioning it in your mind through meditation, then that starts to show up more and more in reality, or the real world outside of your mind. Because like Emily said, we create the world with our mind. We're not seeing things with our eyes, we're perceiving it with our mind. We are creating and curating our own reality at all one point, always at the same time. And if you don't believe that, stand next to two people who have two very differing views and outlooks on reality, and they're in the same exact place with all of the same things going on around them, and yet one of them is miserable and violent and unhappy and sad and convinced everything is terrible, and the person standing next to them is looking around going, look at this beautiful Hawaiian sunshine, right? It's the same reality, the same external world, but completely different internal experiences of it. And that's really what it is.
Faith and fear are the belief in the unseen. So whether you're living in that fear mode of worst case scenario thinking, you're believing in an unseen reality. And the same is true of having faith, that everything is working out on your behalf to lift you higher so that you can have an amazing experience in life. They're both the same. So what do you want to believe? What unseen reality do you intentionally want to create? I think the default, if it has been worst case scenario, you're probably seeing it playing out in your life. I don't think that's working well for you, is it?
Right. Well, I think something you touched on too, Scott, is like what's around you. Where do you find yourself, and what can you curate that's different? Putting yourself around different people, around different messaging. Are you spending all your time watching the news? How are you going to respond? What can you control about the situation? Right? Like, we're not going to change the fact that there was and is ongoing a global pandemic, but what can you shift and change? What's the part that you can curate and how you choose to view things? I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, and I'll even say that you literally can change the world, your external world, through your thoughts. Like for us, I'm not going to diminish the effects that the pandemic has had in people's lives. I recognize and I understand that many people have experienced extreme loss. People are dying and that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean that our experience has to be that. Our experience can be very different in that we recognize that something's going on in the external world, but we don't put all of our focus into it. So we don't see the pandemic around us everywhere. We don't see people dying everywhere. We don't see everybody getting sick. We don't see that in our external world, not because it's not there, but because we put our focus elsewhere. And when you're looking through essentially rose-colored lenses, the world looks better. And it doesn't mean that you're ignoring things and you're whatever they call spiritual bypassing things. It just means that you're focused more on what you can control. You're focused more on making your world a better place. And when you do that, you're inspiring other people to do the same, and you're making their world better too. So that's everything that we do. I mean, so much of the work that we do with our clients is about this vacuum exercise of, in the physical world, making your physical space and your reality that's around you be as much of a reflection as what you desire in your internal world as possible. So you start there with the physical world and get rid of the things that aren't serving you, get rid of the people and the relationships that aren't serving you, start making, but then there's the internal piece, which is the thoughts, starting to learn how you think. What thoughts do you have? Are they the thoughts that you want to have? Where did those thoughts come from? Who put them there? Did you put them there? Did someone else program them into you? If so, is it something that you'd like to reprogram? All right, well, that's what we help with as well. And that's what you can do on your own as well, as getting really intimate with your thoughts, starting to learn exactly how you think, why you think the way you do, and then determining if you want to make a change on that. And if so, then that's where the practice and the work begins.
Yeah. Your beliefs and truths were just you thinking the same thought over and over and over again. So again, the fastest way to determine whether a thought is rooted in fear or love is, how does it feel in my body? Does this thought make me feel good, or does it make me feel bad? And also, when you are feeling bad, feeling these not so great emotions, ask yourself, what am I thinking in this moment? Our emotions are this beautiful gift that we've been given. That it's just like a little alarm that goes off that says, I'm either experiencing love and bliss and joy, or I'm experiencing pain and suffering and lack. And again, our natural state is well-being. You look at nature, it's flourishing, it's prolific in its creation. There's not just one blade of grass or one grain of sand. There's an infinite amount. We are here to create. And we do so through our thoughts and our emotions. Everything that you see in your external world was first a thought. The chair you're sitting on, the computer that you're, whatever device you're listening to this podcast on, was all first within the imagination. Your imagination. What are you imaging? What are you imaging in any given moment? What would you like to be imaging if what you're imaging is not so great? Yeah. What would be better than what you've been imagining?
So it sounds like also you're listening, or you're in tune with your gut, or what have you, just how you're feeling. It has a lot to do with just alarming you or alerting you that something maybe isn't, or that you're on the right track, and hey, this is good, I want more of this, or something's off here. Maybe it's an opportunity to reflect on this.
Yeah.
Well, and it's no coincidence that our brain and our stomach or our intestines are made of the same exact tissue. Like our brain, the physical organ, is the same exact tissue as our digestive tract. So when we have a gut feeling, it's because it's tied together and they work the same way. It's not just a coincidence that you feel things in your gut. Like if you feel a sinking in your stomach when you start thinking about something, it's because you're getting that signal sent from your brain to your digestive tract, because they are connected, letting you know that, that's not a thought I actually really want to have. That doesn't feel right to me. But so often we don't identify that, like thinking about when you're depressed. If you're sitting around and you're depressed, it's because you're having thoughts that make you feel that way. And those thoughts, if you start to recognize them, you'll realize that they're not your own. They've been programmed into you by some other person or experience. And you have the ability to change them by becoming familiar with them and knowing that, oh, there goes that thought again. Now I can feel that in my stomach, or I feel that in my chest, or I feel that in my throat, or I feel cloudiness in my head. And then you learn which part of your body, when you feel it in, you start to learn, oh, well, that's tied to this thought. That's tied to this emotion, right? Like if you feel a sinking in your gut, then that's more of a stability issue. You feel unstable. But if you feel like a tightness in your throat and you start to feel choked up, it's because you're not able to express your emotions in the way you want to. And if you feel really cloudy in your head and you're not sure how to process things, it's because you're not tapping into your higher consciousness. You're not tapping into your limitless mental potential that you have, and instead you're focused more on lower level emotions. So I don't know, I get super excited and geeked out on this, like thinking about how so much of what we do, what we experience is so much bigger than what we give it credit for. I mean, like going back to being able to go into your kitchen and open up the wrong drawer because you move things. So you're literally able to do this activity, right? I mean, your blood is pumping at the exact amount that it needs to. Your heart's beating at the exact rhythm it needs to. Your cells are dividing perfectly just as they're supposed to. Everything's happening, and you're able to walk over this drawer with extreme precision and open up using your hand. And yet then you look inside and your brain goes through this process in a millisecond that says, wait a minute, when I opened this drawer, there were supposed to be silverware in there, but now there are towels. Something's wrong. Reality is not the way it should be. The world is collapsing. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me go through all my files and figure out, oh, that's right. I have a memory of 3 days ago. I actually moved that over there. Now when I think about it, I can think about what clothing I was wearing when that happened. What were the smells in the house, right? All that happens in a millisecond so that you can go, oops, wrong drawer, and walk to the next one. And then the whole process starts again in a millisecond for how to get to that new drawer. And then if you open it up and something wrong is in there, then you can go through a whole nother process. Oh, wait, no, that's right. Then 2 days later, I moved it to another spot because I didn't like that spot, right? There's so much going on, and we have so much capability with our minds. It's staggering, like just how much potential there is within us. And when we start to learn to tap in that, oh, wow, amazing things happen. Really, truly amazing.
Yeah, there's so much potential. But the flip side, I guess, is because it happens so quickly, it's so easy to not focus on it, so easy not to think intentionally about it and reframe it to figure out what you would want to be doing instead, if you had even thought that you could be doing something different instead, because again, it's so quick. It's fascinating.
Yeah. If you hand an electronic device to a child, they're going to tap into potential in that an adult never will in some ways, because they have no fear over what they could do wrong to break it or mess it up, right? So they'll turn on the computer. They're not worried about any sort of viruses being downloaded, anything. They're going to just go crazy, and they're going to tap into stuff in the computer that the adult may never do because they're too afraid to try. But on the flip side of that, you're handing a child this incredibly powerful device that they're really not going to be able to utilize until they begin to really get used to it and to start practicing with it. Same thing with our minds. It's just given to us, right? I mean, from the moment we come into consciousness, it's taken for granted that we can breathe, that we can smell, that we can see. For some of us, I know some of us don't, but we're just this incredibly powerful computer, basically, that we're given when we're born, and we're just not given an owner's manual to it. We're not taught the significance and the importance of it and what it can really do. Instead, we're like, all right, here it is, figure it out on your own and go about doing your normal routine and don't ever really think about how it works. Most people don't, most people probably haven't spent the thousands and thousands of hours that Emily and I have, like diving so deep into this and sitting in silence and meditating and listening to our thoughts and then seeing the benefits and seeing like everything that we learn actually come to truth. Being able to look at the home that we're in right now and know that we envision this home so in detail in our minds that it manifested without us ever knowing exactly how to get it. Like, we saw this place so vividly. And when we walked in, we knew it was the place because we had already lived there in our minds, even though we had no idea that we were going to end up here. We didn't make a plan specifically. We're going to fly from Dominican Republic, which is where we were, and we're going to fly to Hawaii. And then when we get there, we're going to move into that dream home. It was more just, hey, where do you want to go next? Let's have these experiences. Cool. We get there. And then it's like synchronicity after synchronicity. We start having opportunities. We start seeing things. And then the next thing we know, we walk in and it's literally the place that we envisioned, like just in so much detail and so similar that it's scary. So when you start seeing those things come into your life, that's when you start actually building more momentum and getting more serious about it. When you start realizing that, wow, I really can create whatever reality I want, you start getting really excited about it. You start doing the work even more.
Yeah, it is. It is exciting. I believe that so much, right? You're manifesting essentially, right? You're creating your ideal vision and maybe in some ways letting go of how it's going to happen, but just getting super clear on what it's going to be, that of course the universe is going to provide. It's going to be right there for you. And no, you probably didn't know the street address, right? Or maybe even the state that it was going to be in, but that wasn't the key detail for you, right? It was all those other pieces. And, with the power of both of you doing this at the same time with a shared vision, it's no wonder.
Bam. Got some extra oomph behind it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Extra oomph, extra fuel.
That's right.
Who is someone you admire? And what do you admire about them?
You.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Let's end right there. Thank you very much.
Because you are doing your purpose work and you're lifting so many people up with your podcast, with your coaching, everything that you're doing. So yeah, we just want to acknowledge you for the work that you're doing in the world, that you're using your business, your platform, podcast to help elevate the collective consciousness.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah, I admire every human being who is alive in this moment as well, because the odds of you being here are very, very, I mean, it's
billions and billions to one.
Yeah. So just listening, to the podcast right now, you guys are wanting more for yourselves and more for your life. And it's through you really beginning to understand you and improving yourself that is going to produce that ripple effect. That's, you have so much influence and impact on the lives of the people who surround you. And it takes each of us to just really remember who we are and to begin to operate more fully from a space of love, from compassion, from purpose, so that we can shift our collective reality and how we're experiencing things. We all need to become intentional creators, and it starts with you. So thank you for listening.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and going back to when we started our first company technically we started it in 2010, and then we launched the product in 2011. But we started seeing that the ripple effect that social media could have in both positive and negative directions. And we started curating our experience on social media so that we were always seeing inspiring, uplifting messages. But the more and more we looked for it, the less and less we could find. So we decided at that moment that we would start a social media campaign, knowing that we had a small outreach. I think at that point, we probably had a couple hundred friends or something on social media. This was, 2010. So it wasn't as big as it is now. We didn't have as many influencers. There was no TikTok, but we started just in our own way, putting out messages of love every day. So once or twice a day, all we did was just put out a message of love, of trying to make people happy and trying to, change their experience a little bit. And through that, we were able to grow our reach and our company really, really big very quickly because people were hungry for it. People wanted it. People wanted to see those uplifting, inspiring messages. People didn't want to see all the misery and the suffering around us. That's not our normal state. And so to everybody listening to this, what I can say is think about that. Think about if you just thought about all the people that are on your social media feed right now, and if your whole focus on social media was every day to put out something to make those people's lives better in some way, and then if every one of those people did the same thing and every one of those people did this, I mean, think about the growth effect that that can have on the world. And that's why we admire people like you, Joe, because just to put yourself out there and to inspire people with messages like this is so incredibly powerful and so beautiful. And the fact that we have the ability to do that on podcasts and social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever your platform is, that you're able to make the world a better place, and it exponentially grows the more you do it. Like everybody that's in your audience right now can do that right now. They can make a big change in their lives and the people around them just by saying, that's it. I'm not going to put anything more about how terrible COVID is up on my page. I'm not going to put anything about what a jerk Trump was or whatever, I mean, just change your focus towards how can I inspire people more and make people happy. And then when you do that, and the 1,000 people that are your friends start to do that, and their 1,000 friends do that, and their 1,000 friends, that's how huge global change is made. And it's so easy right now. So easy to do that now for us. So I think that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, very well said. I love that. So true, right? It makes it so accessible too for anyone, like you just said. What do you imagine some people admire about you?
Maybe our resilience and our love.
Yeah.
I think, when we started our first company, Love Mat Yoga, it's a yoga mat company, we, over pillow talk one night, we asked, what are we really good at that we want to turn into a business? And we were joking that we're really good at loving people and taking care of people, our friends, our family. And we were just joking, why can't we become professional lovers? Why can't that be our job title? And at the time, we were still in 9-to-5 jobs. And we're like, why not? Why can't we start a company that reminds people to love of their true nature, which is love? And so I would like to say that I would hope that everyone who meets us, they feel love. And they're reminded of their own capacity to give and receive love.
And then as loving and as also as serious as we are about business and doing all that, we're also really fun people. And Emily is one of these sweet, little angelic looking, so nice. She's so sweet and kind. But then if you want to start telling dirty jokes and go down the rabbit hole of that and see who can make the other people blush by the end of it, it'll be Emily.
Oh, that's wonderful.
By the end of the night, Emily took it to a whole other level because she is funny.
I grew up with a brother, and most of my friends growing up were guys, so I know the witty repertoire.
Yeah, another dimension to Emily.
Yes.
I like making people laugh too.
That's great.
That brings me great joy.
Yeah. Well, and we do it for each other. I mean, there are many, many times when Emily and I will have ourselves like literally just in pain. We're laughing so much. Our stomachs are hurting and we can't breathe. Snot's coming out of our nose. We're laughing so hard. That's how we live our lives together. And then we try to do that as much as we can with other people.
That's fabulous.
As well.
I mean, clearly it's one of the reasons why you don't want to be spending that much time apart. Why would you, right? If you get to experience those types of things with each other and because of each other, that sounds absolutely wonderful. Mm-hmm. Well, you two have been very, very generous with your time. What else would you like to share? Not that you owe anything else. Clearly, you've given us so much to consider. But other thoughts that maybe you want to spend more time on that we touched on or didn't touch on that you'd like to share with folks?
Just really want to empower, if you're listening to this, just remind you again that you get to create your reality however you want. And I know sometimes it may not feel like you have control or that you are, you have that power to create change. But just know you've practiced the opposite, and that's okay. No judgment. It's time to begin practicing a new way of thinking and feeling and being in the world. And it's hardwired into you. It's a natural extension of you to create a beautiful life for yourself. And so why not utilize, your your superpowers to create a beautiful reality for yourself. And as you set that example of what's possible, you're going to inspire others to do the same. So if not for yourself, do it for others. But we want you to do it for both, you and for others.
Well, and yeah, one of my favorite practices to take my yoga clients through is, if anybody listening to this has ever practiced yoga, especially in a studio or something like that, you may have gone through what's called the final posture at the end of class, usually called shavasana. It's the corpse pose or the dying pose. And of course, if you've been through that tough yoga class, you know how great it is to lie on your back after working so hard in a sweaty, hot yoga class, and you're working so hard, then you finally get to lay down and just be. And the reason why that posture is performed at the end of a typically very strenuous vinyasa practice is because you've warmed up your body so much to where your mind can cool down, and now you don't have so many thoughts racing through your mind, and you can come into a place of more calm and bliss, or what's called samadhi. And one of my favorite practices when I'm taking clients through shavasana is to take them through a mental journey of their body dissolving into the ground and becoming part of everything, and realizing that we're not matter, but we're energy. We're simply bubbles of energy. And when we feel that, when we can experience that, like letting our physical body die away and connecting to our limitless energy and letting it just start to really fill the room and the space around us and fill the world with our energy, and then realizing that we're literally made up of the same exact matter as a star is made up of millions of light years away. When you pull out your telescope and you look at a star, you are made of part of that same matter, right? So we are so incredibly powerful, and we're so much more than just the physical body, and so much more than this physical reality that we're experiencing. We are infinite. We always have been. We always will be. There's so much more to us. And when you start to realize that and start to really embody that, that's when you start to realize just how much control you have over your life and how much control you have to create a life that you want, and then to bring others along with you on the ride. So, yeah.
Wow. You guys, thank you for all the really cool thoughts you brought here, and the energy and the wonderful things for me and us as listeners to consider. This is it's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate both of you. Thank you.
We exist to have fun moments like this, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity to be able to share this with other people. And
truly my pleasure.
Definitely. Let's all get out there and have some fun with life, with each other.
This has been Intentionally Ever After, hosted by intentional lifestyle coach Joe Bukartek. If you would like to have your own intentional conversation with Joe on or off the air, visit intentionallyeverafter.com. Thanks for listening.